I'm Greg Borowski, and we're joined now by Craig Gilbert, our Washington Bureau Chief, to talk about last night's presidential election results. It was not a good night for the front-runners, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Good night for Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders. Let me ask the question this way. On a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is just a little blip in the inevitable ending for the front-runners as winners, and 10 is a major reshuffling of the deck, how would you rate the results yesterday?
Well, so I think you have to separate it out between the Democrats and the Republicans. I think it is a bigger deal on the Republican side for a variety of reasons. There's more uncertainty, there's more division, there's more questions about the math on the Republican side. So I put it at a 7, maybe, on the Republican side, and maybe a 4 on the Democratic side. Lingering doubts about Hillary Clinton, but she remains in a very commanding position in terms of the delegates, and Bernie Sanders didn't get a big delegate gain out of Wisconsin because of the delegate rules. It was a great victory for him, but we knew going in that this was a weak, kind of a difficult state for her as well as for Donald Trump.
Well, let's look at the Democratic numbers. So Bernie Sanders came out with about 56, 57%, Hillary Clinton about 43%. So that's a little bit better than was projected by the polls. Bernie's been creeping up. Where did his victory come from, and what was key to his success?
Well, it was pretty broad. I mean, he won almost every county in the state. He did really well with the groups we thought he would do well with, like young voters and independents and men, blue-collar voters. But he really fought Hillary Clinton to a draw with her groups, like women, and he lost African Americans, but it's a small part of the population. But partisan Democrats were very equal. That was supposed to be an advantage for Hillary Clinton. So a pretty broad victory by Bernie Sanders.
All right, and let's look on the Republican side, where Ted Cruz came out on top, and he had a 48% margin to Donald Trump's 35%. John Kasich had 14%. So Trump kind of had his 30-ish threshold. Ted Cruz leapfrogged him here. What was key to Ted Cruz's success?
Well, you're right. Trump looked exactly, his vote looked exactly like what we thought it would look like, down to the map. I mean, north-south, his number. Ted Cruz, his key was consolidating the anti-Trump vote, among other things, and that allowed him to broaden his coalition. It wasn't just he did great with really conservative voters, but he was pretty competitive with mainstream conservatives, more than competitive with mainstream conservatives. He was pretty competitive with moderates even. He fought Donald Trump to a draw among anti-trade Republican voters. That's a big deal because that's one of Donald Trump's issues.
All right, and one of the features of the Republican side was Scott Walker, the former presidential candidate, endorsing Trump, campaigning aggressively with him in the final days. Is this a big win for Walker, or was this just him catching the wave of Cruz was going to win?
So
anyways?
A little bit of both. I mean, it wasn't just Walker. It was part of talk radio. It was part of the Republican political class. It was part of the outside, stop Trump people coming in. But Governor Walker is like a central figure in Wisconsin politics. He's polarizing and he's mobilizing. And so when the focus turned to him, I think it got people charged up. I think it helped amp up the vote for Cruz, particularly in southeastern Wisconsin, where Governor Walker has a long history of doing really well. And if you look at the Cruz victory and you look at the map, it looks a lot like the Governor Walker's primary map.
He was able to
2010.
succeed where some others haven't in their endorsements. At least he delivered a victory for his guy.
And it's a different political culture here. The others, I mean, we've had this unique war over Walker here, and that you could see that having an impact yesterday.
All right, and last, let's talk about the turnouts. We had numbers that are as high as 1972, so even bigger than were projected. What do you think was driving that, and does that say anything for the fall in terms of what we can expect?
So pretty astounding. I mean, you've got the combination of a state where people are really politically engaged, where you've got low barriers to voting in terms of an open primary and same-day, election day registration. And then you have a race that's still going on this late in the calendar, and Wisconsin's benefited from being all by itself on the calendar. I mean, the risk is that the race will be over by the time it gets here, but the reward is what we saw, which is off the charts turnout, topped only by New Hampshire, which was the second primary. So it's astounding to see turnout at that level in a state that's like the 33rd or 34th state to vote.
All right, well, we'll leave our discussion there. You can follow Craig's coverage on jsonline.com and check in on our website for all sorts of results from last night's elections.